So looking down now, I'm going to turn around a little bit here so you can see where I'm at regarding, there it is, the mosque that's on top of the Temple Mount on the south wall. And behind me, below me, are all the old mikvah baths, the mikvah, I guess is what they say when there's more than one. And they would have been the places where you had to ritually take a bath and cleanse before you could go into the temple and present your offering or sacrifice. They weren't hygienic baths like go to get yourself a scrub down. They were ritual purification kind of baths, so it was more of a dipping yourself in. And so this would have had a whole building over the top of it, and it would have been like literally a bath house so you come into, and that's where the cleansing would take place in these ritual mikvahs. So when Peter baptizes 3,000 people on that day of Pentecost, this is where that would have happened. Of course, all Jewish people fully understood the meaning of the ritualistic cleansing bath in the mikvah. 11 years ago, we moved into this building, preparing to come into this building. 11 years ago. I had already been the pastor of this church for, maybe 2008 until 2014, 6 years. So I'd been on the ropes a while. We owned a downtown building on the corner of 2nd Division. That building still stands. That was our church. It was full of all kinds of different people. In a given Sunday, I'd have 45 members, 30 drunks, and 4 dogs in church. That's who I was preaching to. The dogs were more well-behaved than many of the people. And we got prepared to make a big change because the church was dying. And it had been dying for years, decades really. I don't know how it held on, only by a miraculous word of God, and somehow he had sustained it. We'd sat on that corner for over 100 years. They built the original building in 1905, tore that one down in 1950 and built a new one. That was the one that I was pastoring in. But the church was founded in 1888. So we'd been around a long time. And we had to gather the congregation together in a dying church and say, okay, we're going to make a big, huge leap of a decision. And our decision is either to A, close this church down, sell this building, and disperse and scatter to the wind, and give the money to the denomination to do something else with it. Or B, we're going to try to do something else, sell this building and do something else, because everything we could do in that building had been tried. In order to make a decision of that magnitude with people who had grown up in one church, one building, it's all they ever knew, they'd gotten married there, their parents had gotten married there, their grandparents had gotten buried in that, had their memorial services in that church, and so it was very dicey. So we had to put together a list of how are we going to get along before we make big decisions. Because in the time of making big decisions, it's too late to decide how you're going to get along. So we came up with this little pamphlet called a behavioral covenant. And in it, we all discussed 10 things that were going to be the way we would get along with each other so that we could make big decisions together. And we all adopted this behavioral covenant. Everybody agreed to it. And then we could march into making big decisions. And this stayed with us for a while. When we moved up to this building, this little pamphlet was always available, the behavioral covenant pamphlet. You can see their original name was the Gathering House, a covenant church and cafe. That's what all the signs said. And it confused everybody because the one people were like, well, I don't understand the cafe part because we were a coffee shop. Come on into a coffee shop. We eventually had these fantastic gourmet grilled cheese sandwiches, but we realized the word church on the building killed our coffee shop. Nobody would come. So we had to slowly remove, like it couldn't say Covenant Church and Cafe at the bottom anymore, just the Gathering House. And do you think that might have been a fight to remove that name off of the thing? What do you think it was? Yes, it was. Yes, it was. So just in case you're wondering. So we had all of these changes, and then COVID hit, and this little document sort of fell by the wayside, and this church scattered to the wind anyway, and we'd already been in this building several years, and we rebuilt pretty much from scratch after COVID, and we never quite revived this again. And recently, over several months, I've been talking to different people, and I said, maybe we should revisit it. Maybe we should look again at how a congregation gets along and how we will agree to get along. Because, as he mentioned in the video, the church is a family. The church is supposed to be the antithesis of the world. We know how the world gets along. It fights, it argues, it's cancel culture, it's sarcasm, it's belittling, it's knocking each other down, it's violence against anyone who disagrees with you, it's cutting off people who have different opinions than you. That's the culture we live in, and Jesus drops this New Testament bomb in our laps and says, you're going to be different. You're going to love one another, you're going to figure out how to do this, and you're going to be the shining beacon of an example of how to get along differently than the way the world does it. And periodically it's worth asking ourselves, how we doing? How we doing to the Jesus standard? So I thought today we would have a little conversation about the 10 items of this behavioral covenant. And in order to do it, I've asked Sierra, who represents kind of the younger generation of leadership, to come up, and Jim, who was one of the few guys remaining who was in the congregation when we wrote this. He was our chairman of the board at the time we wrote this. I was the pastor. To come on up and have a conversation and let Sierra, as the new generation, interview us old duffers about why we chose this, and then she can decide whether it's worth keeping or not. All right, so are you guys ready? Are you ready for our little interview conversation? Jim, is your mic on?
Yeah, I think so.
Good.
Right. Yes.
And I got myself a couple extra notes here from things I remember, so I'm going to bring this down just in case I need to think more. So, okay. All right.
All right. Okay, so starting off, number one on the list of this behavioral covenant was build each other up and not tear down. And you told me, because I sat down and talked with Rob when he first brought this up to me about 2 weeks ago, and then I got to sit down with Jim and Rob for just a few minutes to kind of review, like, what is the basis of this and where does this come from and why do we have it? Because I've been a member of the church for 8+ years now, and for me this was new. I didn't know much about it. And so I got to ask them, and so the order of these is not necessarily important. You made that clear. It's all of them are important, and the order in which we're presenting them is not. But you did mention in this build each other up and not tear down, and you can see the Bible verses there on the screen that back this up. The word build, you had a really interesting thing to say about that.
Oh yeah, the Thessalonians verse there, build each other up. The Greek word actually means to construct a house. It means to actually create or build something that's going to last, right? You're actually together constructing a house. That was actually what the Greek word means for build each other up. Build up means you're creating something more than what's there now so that it can be lived in, which is sort of the mission of the church. And so this was our first, we're going to build each other up and not tear each other down. And that's still relevant today, I think.
Yes, I think so. I think so. In this world that we live in, being able to build each other up and not tear each other down is...
Especially because we live in a culture that does the exact opposite. It does the exact opposite today. So tearing down is the norm and not building up. So, and then the Philippians verse, we would add that in there too. We didn't want to have situations like when we sat down, we didn't know we were going to build a coffee shop when we decided we were going to sell the building. We didn't know what we were really going to do. All we knew was we were going to cash out this building. We weren't even sure how much money we would have. And the questions were, well, what should we do? Should we just go buy another church building somewhere and just try to restart? Should we do something very different? We ended up choosing something different. But we didn't want to have people sitting around listening and you share an idea and have someone else say, oh, that's stupid, right? Okay, that doesn't fit building each other up, and that's tearing each other down. So we had to have ways that we'd hold the conversation to always come back to praising and listening and that kind of thing. Jim, you want to add anything to that?
No, it's all about respect, and all of these go like this. So most of them are very much common sense, but it's weird that the world doesn't follow that common sense.
Yes. Yeah. Great. Thank you. And Jim, you've been a member of the church for a really long time.
Yeah, I was downtown about 2 years before we moved up, so 12, 13 years. So I got on the front edge of the selling. Well, when I first came, we weren't talking about selling the building. Then we had to do something because we weren't going to survive down there anymore because just for a number of reasons. And then I was on the board or leadership team and chair of that, which chair just really means that you don't have any more power. It's just you talk to Rob a little bit more, kind of you're more of a conduit of the conversation at times. And so that's why I'm up here, is just lived through building this space and but it started with creating, what do we want to create? And we know that change is hard. Change is always hard. And that's why this came about, because we knew there were some people who wouldn't want to sell the building. They wouldn't agree. And I don't know, most of you have lived long enough, you know that if you talk with somebody more than a few conversations, there's going to be something you don't agree on necessarily. So do you just cut them off and run? Or do you work through it because they're family and they're people? So that's kind of why I'm here and kind of reiterating what Rob was saying.
Thank you, thank you. And so next on the list is to individually work towards self-control, practicing the fruits of the Spirit. And I personally find this one really interesting because you can see on the board there the Galatians verse that talks about all the different fruits of the Spirit. And self-control is one of those fruits of the Spirit. And you guys called it out separately in this, apart from all the other fruits of the Spirit. And I want to know why.
Yeah, you can, when you read that Galatians verse, it'll list the 9 fruits of the Spirit there: love, joy, peace, patience, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, right? And so we would work towards self-control because we were going to be in a situation where to make a big decision and a huge change, it was going to cost us a lot. It was going to cost us a lot relationally, emotionally, financially, time, energy would be spent on this. And everybody had, at some level, you weren't going to get your way. There had to have been compromise in order for us to do anything. And so that meant the self-control was you're going to realize you got to get control of yourself, your tongue, your emotions, to listen to what God is saying to the group, maybe not just to you, so that we can make a big change and do this thing together. And I think we finally made the change with like 25 of us left.
Yeah.
When we finally made the big change. But it was, you know, the interesting thing about that Galatians verse, if you were to go to the book of Galatians and read chapter 5, just before he lists the fruits of the Spirit, he lists about 15 things that are wrong, not fruits of the Spirit. Like, this is what the sinful nature does. And so we didn't want to include that. It's like, but the sinful nature would be like, okay, there's all this stuff that's divisive and destructive, and this is how a lot of people act. You're going to be different. And you're going to practice these things. In self-control, we felt like if you could get self-control under your grip and hold on to that tight, you can probably do the rest of them better. But if you don't have self-control, you're going to blow apart love, you're going to blow apart joy, peace will be ruined. Without self-control, the others get ruined. So we kind of made this we're going to practice doing these things. We put the word practice in because it was sort of like saying, we know we're not going to get it right every time. So we're practicing it. We're going to make sure we get this right as we go along. We'll get better at it as we go. That was kind of the intent.
Yeah, and to me, self-control is, this human nature of ours, at least mine, isn't real great. And so when oftentimes, when something doesn't go my way or whatever, my knee-jerk reaction is what I call the human thing. The knee-jerk reaction is to turn away or to respond angrily or something like that. Self-control is that taking a deep breath and figuring out what is the goal we want here and how can I achieve that. You know, I can call you stupid and you're dumb, or I can say, help me, explain that to me again, you know, and then maybe we come to an agreement. So that self-control, I agree totally with Rob. It's where everything starts, and it's not responding with your knee-jerk reaction when your button's been pushed. It's shut your mouth, and I'm talking to me. Keep your mouth shut, take a deep breath, and usually the best thing is just let it go, because that relationship I have with you is way more important than winning this argument.
The other thing we learned with this one, and we kind of knew it going into it, but you're only as strong as the weakest link when it comes to this one. We have every single one of you has been in a meeting where one belligerent, ornery person can destroy an entire meeting. You've all been at a, family reunion where crazy Uncle Waldo will go off and the whole family reunion's ruined, right? So we have all experienced only the person with the weakest link in the room can blow it apart for everybody. And so we started really encouraging and strengthening each other about, hey, don't be that weak link who destroys the entire room with your opinion. Make sure that you hold on to get your self-control under wraps so that you don't blow up the whole room. And I thought we did pretty good at this one over time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you found it helped guide some of the decisions that you had to make.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, and then we have seek to discover what is best for our church as a whole, not what may be best for us or for some small group of the church. This one, Jim, you already see you've got something locked and
No,
loaded.
no, yeah.
Please share your thoughts.
Well, it's just, again, it's that nature of me, which our American culture is good at, and it's hard to put that behind you, and it's what's best for everybody. And what I found in my years of being here and being involved is oftentimes it's not the way I would make that decision if it was just mine, and that's not the direction maybe we would go. But being convinced by the group that this, for the whole church, this is the best idea. And so that's the thing, it's just putting others first, and in this case, family, you first.
I was looking back at my notes, I did each one of these as an individual sermon in 2017. And this one I called, It's Not About Me. And that was the title of this sermon. And it really kind of captures it all, that when you come together into the church body and you're going to ask, what does Jesus want to do in this place? What is Jesus trying to accomplish here? It's so often that people will say, well, I think this church needs to create the ministry that I need or that I want. I remember we had a lady for a long time, she was a single mom. She was really adamant. We needed to create a singles ministry for people over 35. And I'd be like, well, that's kind of you and nobody else at the time, right? So she wanted us to try to create a ministry because she needed it. It was like, does the church need that ministry or do you need that ministry? And I'm not saying it's a wrong ministry, but it wasn't something that we should have spent energy, time, or effort creating at that time because it wasn't a need of the church. But she was very adamant about that. There were other people who were very adamant that, we came out of a Swedish roots. It was the Swedish people who built the church and started it, and a lot of them wanted to hang on to the Swedishness of the church. To which the rest of us were like, I don't think the Swedish immigrants are really coming anymore. I don't think we're seeing a lot of those coming to Americans or come to Spokane like they were in the 1880s and the 1890s. So I think now that we're in the 2000s, that wave has passed. And doing the St. Lucia Festival at Christmas time probably ain't going to be a big draw, right? That's what I was kind of saying. So there were these strange ministries that were coming along that people were like, they wouldn't let go of them or they wouldn't change them and say, well, what does the church need? What is Jesus trying to do now? What is Jesus trying to do in our culture now? Why is this building in this place? What's this neighborhood around us like now? And so what is it Jesus would want to do now with us? And sometimes what Jesus wants to do in a church isn't necessarily the ministry that an individual person needs. And it's like, well, that's okay because Jesus gave up his throne of glory. Philippians 2, the whole passage of Philippians 2 is about how he gave up his throne of glory, took on human flesh, and became a slave, and died a death all the way to even the cross. How far was he willing to go for us? And that was an immense fall, an immense change, an immense giving up of prerogatives, initiatives, and his rights and his powers. And he said, that's the example of Philippians 2. So it's like, well, what are we going to give up for the sake of the gospel that Jesus wants to do for other people? And I still think that's one worth keeping, right? Discover what's best for the church.
Oh, I think so. I think that as a church, that should always be in the forefront of our minds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really hard because I read a survey recently. They asked pastors, what is the purpose of the church? And this huge survey was done with hundreds and hundreds of pastors across America. And they said the purpose of the church is to win the lost for Jesus Christ and make disciples of all people. That's the purpose. That's why the church exists. And then they went to those congregations and they asked a member of the congregation, what's the purpose of the church? Overwhelmingly, the answer from the congregation was to take care of the needs of me and my family. Overwhelmingly. And so it was like, oh, well, there's your problem. Your pastors and your congregation are completely at odds with why the church exists. One says we're on a mission from the kingdom of God, and one says the church exists to take care of me and my family's needs. And but I know you gathering house people, you're not like that. You guys you have a big mission. You have a big mission, I think, right? But that's America.
And I just want to point out one example that did this so well, and she's passed away now, Frances Pierce. She grew up in the church downtown. She passed away a few years ago, and she was well in her 80s, maybe early 90s. Could you imagine? But she came up here with us. Could you imagine when it was still a Swedish church? And they spoke Swedish, and it was very formal and traditional. And I remember she was on the leadership team at the time, too. And what a gift of grace she demonstrated. Because I'm sure 90% of what we did it's not the church she ever knew. And it was this, she'd been in the same church since she was a little girl. And she was well in her mid-80s when we moved into here and did what we did. Could you imagine that for a minute, being that person, how entrenched you were in this is my church, which isn't right or wrong, but to let it go.
Yeah.
If you knew Frances, she was a gift.
She told us she used to sit in the balcony in the old building, the one they tore down. And then they built the new one in the 1950s, so all she'd ever known was that church her whole life. So, and she was one of the champions. We knew if we get Frances on our side to make a move, everybody else would follow.
And
it's true, like
powerful lady.
It's true. Like you get a few key players in a church, and you're like, if they say yes, 20 other people will say yes.
But the cool thing is we didn't have to convince her because she knew what was best for the church. And I'm sure most of the decisions that were made, she probably, her heart was saying, no, I want to hang on to the old. But the church is more important than me.
Yeah, it was painful to her, but she did it. And she was a champion getting us into this building.
That's
And she
incredible.
passed away. And once in a while, her husband Lydell can still make it show up. I don't see him today,
No.
but what a gem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And that actually leads really well into the next point of accepting disagreement, conflict, and evaluation as normal and natural, always extending apologies and offering forgiveness. And I love this point because we are human and we are going to disagree and there will be conflict. But you put evaluation in there. And I think that word stands out a little bit because I think we all expect disagreement and we all expect conflict, but to accept evaluation as normal and natural. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, churches can get in a rut where you no longer start asking yourself, is that ministry you're doing effective? And you always want to ask, is it effective? Is it still needed? I know you've been doing it for years and years, but is it still needed? Is it worth the bang for the buck? They were doing this big event that they did every summer called Kids Night Out, and they spent $5,000 to do this Kids Night Out, loaned one family the church van so they would bring kids down, but then they wouldn't ever come to church using the van. And so my thing was, you've been doing this Kids Night Out, and you've been doing it for 15 years, and $5,000 or more a year. How many families come to the church now because of Kids Night Out? And the answer was 0. And so it's like, what, kind of like, well, what is the purpose of this Kids Night Out recreational night? Is it to grow the church? Is it to strengthen the children's ministry? What is the purpose of it? And they didn't know, other than we do this recreational night, and we've been doing it for so long, we don't know how to quit doing it. And so you want to evaluate and say, should we still keep doing the things we're doing, or is it time to make a big change? And this is the one, like, younger generation of leaders coming along and saying, well, look, I know how you guys do things, but, if we were in charge, we'd do it differently. And the older generation of us have got to be ready to say, okay, give us your ideas. Let's run with what you see might need to be changed. The other thing is, this is true and always has been true, and it's true of the very first church. When you have big church growth, you will have conflict. I mean, we'll go to Acts chapter 6, and right off the bat, as the church is booming and exploding in growth, there's already a conflict about distributing helping the different widows that were in there. And the Jewish widows were getting a bigger share of help than the Hellenistic or the Greek widows in the church, that caused a huge fight inside the church. So it's always been the case that when a church grows, that growth creates conflict. So some churches are like, well, we just don't want to grow. I don't want any new people coming because new people will disrupt the comfortable thing I have. But you can't be on mission to impact the world for Jesus Christ, seeing the lost get saved, seeing disciples get made, and not grow. And yet when you grow, you add new people. And when you add new people, it's like you're starting all over again with new conflicts and new things. So we said, we're going to accept that we're going to disagree. It's going to be okay. We're not always going to like each other about everything. We're not always going to agree with each other about everything. But when we have a conflict, we're going to work on making sure that forgiveness happens and grace happens. We're going to always offer apologies, and we're going to always offer forgiveness. And I could look around the room and, oh man, I've made Jim mad a couple of times, and I can look at Bill Ritton, where's Bill Davis? I've made him mad. And I can look around the room and say, I have had it out with some people in this church, and they've had it out with me, and we still love each other dearly. Right? We're like, tell me when I'm wrong. They'll set me straight. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll take that one. And how many times do you forgive? How many times did Jesus tell us we need to forgive each other?
70 times 7.
70 times 7, right? Peter goes to him and says, hey, how many times should I ask for forgiveness? Some guys offended me 7 times. Is that enough? And Jesus said 7 times 70, over and over. So we're like, you just keep offering forgiveness. There's only been like a couple of cases in my lifetime where I've said to someone, it's time you found another church. And that's when they are a wolf damaging the body here. If someone is causing constant damage to the flock of God's people, it's like, I think this church is not a fit for you. All my years, 17 years pastoring, that's only been a couple of times I've had to say to somebody, I think your time with us has come to an end. But by and large, it's like as long as they're like seeking forgiveness and working through apologies, we keep forgiving, and people will make huge mistakes here, big mistakes, and we're supposed to say, under the grace of God, that's okay. We keep loving you. We keep loving you.
And I think the apologies, and maybe your side of the argument is correct, but the way you handled presenting or treating the person, they're deserving of an apology. And apologies are oftentimes incredibly hard, especially to the people you're closest to, aren't they? Yeah, the ones that should be easiest to say I'm sorry to are oftentimes the most difficult people to say you're sorry to. I taught a class for a season called Avid, and one of the things I enjoyed that reminds me much of this, and it's the evaluation piece, is it's called philosophical chairs, and you clear your room and you put line chairs on one side, line half the chairs on the other side, and you give a situation. I taught 7th, 8th graders, and so you'd give something like, I don't know, you don't get a driver's license unless you're passing with a C all your classes, or something that they would feel different about. And there was a whole list of different ones. And if you agree with that, you sit over here. If you disagree with that, sit over here. And if you're not sure, sit on the floor in the middle. And then you pick somebody on one side. And they would say, well, I think that is correct, that unless you're passing school, you shouldn't get the responsibility of driving because, and they'd give their reason, and everybody's respectful and fight, kind of like this is. Okay. And then you go to the other side. And one of the things that I think is cool that we can all do when we're in these situations is on the other side, the first thing they have to do is restate what they heard. What I heard you say was, because isn't half the time with conflict, we feel like you don't even listen to me. You know, you're not even listening to me. So they had to say, what I heard you say was, but here's what I'm thinking. And the cool thing about the evaluation is you're thinking, and people who aren't sure can get up and move to one side or the other. People from one side can get up and move to the other side or the middle. So it's that evaluation. Ooh, I didn't think of that. That makes a lot of sense. I'm not sure now if I'm on this side. Or the best was a wonderful young man I had as a 7th grader and 8th grader, because it was a 2-year class kind of deal. Just a wonderful young man. He started giving the rebuttal, stopped mid-sentence, got up, and moved to the other side. Because he was big enough to evaluate and say, ooh, I didn't think of that, but that holds more water than my argument. Evaluation.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Will.
And I'll throw in, just if you're visiting and you don't know, our church, only the members of the church make the big decisions. So only the members of the church can put the church in debt, buy or sell property, hire or fire the senior pastor. Only the members can do that. There is no board who behind the scenes can do any of that. So we've got to get along to figure out how to do it. And when we get along on big issues, we're going to have disagreements. So
Yeah, exactly. And all of these tie really well together, but it does lead us really well into the next point of believing the best of each other and give each other the benefit of the doubt. And I think that believe the best of each other, I've been in some workplaces that'll bring in a moderator, and the moderator writes on the whiteboard, right? Control your airtime and assume they are coming from a good place. Like, you're supposed to assume the person who is giving the argument or is speaking because they want the best for something. And I think that to see this backed up by a Bible verse and to see that believe the best of each other, it's huge, and it can really make a difference when it comes to disagreements and conflicts. Did you find that the case with using this?
I think that we just initially started that everybody really is out for what's best. They're not out for themselves. They're not out for that. And I've been in big churches, I couldn't say that. In a big church, somebody's always jockeying for power or position. we're not a big enough church to matter for that kind of stuff. Right? You're not going to be super popular or powerful if you become a leader in our church. You're just going to work more than everybody else. Yeah.
Amen.
So we don't really have that problem in a small church. So we don't have that jockeying for power and position. But there is a sense of which, do you really believe that someone in this church has an opinion and they're holding that opinion for the legitimate purpose of being destructive to the church? No, they're not. So believe the best. Maybe they know something you don't know. Maybe there's an awareness they have through conversations they're having that they're aware of a problem that you're not aware of. And so believe that they really are out for the best. Don't assume the worst of someone. Don't assume ill motive. Assume good motive until they prove otherwise. That's the way we want to be, and not the way America's doing it right now, folks. They're always assuming the worst of people.
Assuming good intent is what I learned as a teacher with group norms, but same thing. And the thing to remember when you're kind of in this thing, we're on the same team. I try to do like in my marriage and stuff. If there's some difference of opinion or conflict, there never is, you know. But we're on the same team. We're not the enemy. We're not the enemy here. We are on the same team. And we just have a difference of opinion. So take that deep breath and step back and assume good intent. And that's correct. We are on the same team. And that's easy when things are smooth, but when we disagree a little bit, we're still on the same team.
Yeah, thanks. And that does all of these again. They tie together so well. They all go hand in hand. And I feel like this one is very similar to the previous one we just talked about. But while bearing witness to biblical faith, Christ calls us to, we agree to disagree without malice or ill will, recognizing that no one has a corner on truth and that there is always more we can learn.
Yeah, so let's set the fence. There's a fence in Christianity. God is Trinitarian. Jesus is the Son of God. He literally lived on this earth. He literally rose from the dead. He was crucified in the flesh. There are things that are outside the fence. If you believe opposite of those, you're outside the Christian fence. But there's things inside the Christian fence that we don't all agree on, right? Predestination and election. Speaking in tongues or not, right? Is prophecy a sign gift or is it proclaiming the word of God? Other things, like, and now it's filtered into the church like, well, if you don't hold the same view I hold on Trump's tariffs, you can't be in the fellowship with me, right? Or you can't hold the same view that I have on whatever it might be, immigration or whatever. We have allowed a lot of those kinds of issues to become, we're like, well, wait a minute. Inside the box of Christianity, there's a lot of diversity. And if you've been in the faith long enough, sooner or later, I can guarantee you there's something you will change your mind about. I was taught in seminary that baptism was an ordinance. Nothing really happens. It's not sacramental. You just get dunked, you get wet, you're doing it as an obedience to God. Over time, through a lot of studying, a lot of different experiences I had, I changed my view on that. I'm now sacramental on that. I believe there's a power of God that happens in water baptism that you can't get any other way. And so I've changed some views on things, right? I became a Christian in a Holy Roller Pentecostal church where everybody prayed in tongues at once. Right, and it was a little creepy. I'll throw that out. I'll throw that word out there. And it was a little creepy, but that's what I saw. That's what I experienced. And then over time, I started reading the Bible, and I said, "Hey, I think the New Testament tells us not to do that." Right, and so I was labeled as having a rebellious spirit, which is how they do in that kind of. So there's been things I've changed my mind about, and so there are times when there will be stuff inside the fence of Christianity that we're not going to hold the same view on, but we've got to be able to still say, hey, that's okay, we can still get along.
Yeah, and because none of us have a corner on the truth and things change. And really my thing is always, you and I may have a difference of opinion and we may kind of butt heads a little bit, have a discussion, but at the end of that, what we need to do is go to lunch and really argue who's going to pay the bill. That's what we should be. No, it's me, no, it's you, no, I got this. That's where we should be, loving on each other and saying, hey, it's okay to disagree. It's cool. And I agree totally with Rob. There's some non-negotiables. The basic tenets of faith that make Christianity different. Those are non-negotiable. But most of the things are. I mean, I've been in a number of churches over the years, and I've even known them little things like, do you preach on topics Are you a topical preacher that you take a topic and preach topics? Or do you go through the Bible verse by verse, the book of the Bible? And some people, that's a huge deal. I've found in leading home groups over years, some people we're here to do a Bible study only. Can't argue with that. But if we aren't studying a book of the Bible, I don't want to be part of it. No book studies, no books. We don't read a book by a Christian author. Anything like that. We don't watch The Chosen and discuss it. So we can get in there. It's like, why does that divide us? What? Come on, let's go to lunch and argue over who's paying. That's my thing.
Yeah. I would look at my own journey, and I'd come to faith in a Holy Roller Pentecostal church. Went to a Holy Roller Pentecostal Bible college my freshman year. Hated it. Ruined my Christianity. Came back here. Went to stayed in that Assemblies of God denomination for 1 year. Left church for 5 years. Hated anybody who went to church. Didn't want to have anything to do with them. Eventually, God changed my heart, and I drifted into Calvary Chapel Fellowship. And I led worship at the Calvary Chapel Fellowship, which is now way out north. At the time, it was on Nora. I was your Thursday night worship leader. I would win a scholarship, or I'd go to Accumulate Christian Camps, a very arch-conservative Baptist group. I would win a scholarship to Multnomah School of the Bible, which is a Reformed Calvinist, 5-point Calvinist seminary, and the antithesis of my Assemblies of God upbringing, right? Complete other end of the spectrum. And then I would drift around, and finally I said one day when I was out going to be a church planner in 2000 down in California, and I was talking to a guy in Golden Gate Park who had come out of Willow Creek, and he and I were sitting on a park bench, and I was telling him what I wanted. I said, you know what I'd really like to have? I'd really like to attend a church where they were honest about what they believed. He said, what do you mean by that? I said, well, every time I go to these churches, they say, oh, we believe the Bible is the Word of God, and we believe in the Trinity, and we believe Jesus is the Son of God and died on the cross for our sins. We believe there's a regeneration of the Holy Spirit through the repentance, and that's how you get eternal life, and that's what we believe. And then you get into the church, and you realize, oh, no, you also have to believe in predestination, or you have to speak in tongues, or women can't be on the stage, or yes, they can. Or there's all these sub-doctrines that they always hide. And that drove me nuts. I'm like, just be honest about what you believe. Just give me the list. If your real list is 14 things, don't tell me you only believe 5 things, right? It was driving me nuts. I don't know how you guys feel about that. I just felt it was sort of a bait and switch. And I said, I just want a denomination that believes what it believes and preaches that and gets along on the other stuff. And he goes, oh, you want the Evangelical Covenant. Never heard of it. So he introduces me to the guy who happened to be in California at the time, who was the big church planner for the national thing. And I sit down with him and I say, so what's your doctrines? And he laid them out. And then he said, okay, so here's the thing. We believe all the basic, conservative, Bible-believing, evangelical churches believe, but we have 3 odd things. He goes, number 1, you have to be congregational polity. No group, board, or single pastor can be the king of the church. No board can be the directors who don't listen to the people. You have to have congregational polity. Number 2, we ordain women. Now, I'd been in a Baptist conference where they believed you could not ordain women. And through my own Bible study, I had already changed my opinion on that and thought, yeah, women can be ordained. And that was how I was stepping out of being a Baptist already. And then he said, and the third thing is, we do both kinds of baptism, infant and believer. You have to be willing to accept both and not fight about it. And I said, okay, what's your view on eschatology? Premillennial, postmillennial, what are you? Are you mid-rapture, pre-rapture, rapture at all? What's your view on tongues? What's your view on to get the prophecies? He says, we don't have positions on those things. I said, so you got Holy Roller Pentecostal black churches that are doing speaking in tongues, and some high-looking Lutheran church where they're wearing the stoles and they got incense, and your sister churches in the same denomination? He's like, yeah, we just agree not to fight about it. I'm like, I think I like you guys. So I went to my very first conference, and sure enough, man, I was standing in this giant room. There were 2,500 leaders there at a midwinter conference, and these 2 young guys were sitting in front of me with earrings and ponytails, and 2 old guys were sitting beside me in brown suits with ties on, man. And they're leading the worship, and they're doing the room is full of Asian people and African American people and white people and Latino people. And when I was in the Baptist group, they were only old white guys. And so already I'm like, I kind of like this room. It's amen, and the vibe is cool. And I remember we sang a hymn, And we got up, and the two dudes with ponytails in front of me, they sang with gusto these ancient hymns out of the hymn book. And then they sang, at that time it was, Vineyard was the big worship song. And then they sang this huge, beautiful Vineyard song, and they had sheet music to it. And these two old guys in brown suits got up, and I said, now we'll see, because I fully expected them to go like this, right? But they sang with gusto as best they could to sing this modern Vineyard song, and I'm like, I'm sticking with these guys, right? I'm sticking with these guys. And the two dudes in ponytails will sing a hymn. Ponytails and earrings are going to sing hymns, and these two old guys are going to sing a Vineyard song. And this room is amening with a lot of black voices and Hispanic voices, and they were doing the Apostles' Creed in Korean, and they were doing the Lord's Prayer in Spanish, and I'm like, I like this group. I'm going to learn here. And so ever since, it's like we learn to get along and not fight about the minor things.
That's incredible. That's incredible. That's why I stay here.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay.
And one of the dudes with ponytails is going to spend the night at our house tonight. He doesn't have a ponytail anymore. He's like me. He became a very close friend.
Grew up a little bit.
Yeah. Well, both old guys bald with beards now. That's what ministry did to us.
Well, that leads really well into commit to being inconvenienced for the sake of the gospel.
Oh, yeah.
This is probably my favorite one on the list because it's so true that you're just going to be inconvenienced if you're a part of this church, if you're part of any church, if you're reading the gospel.
Can I start this one? Because when we moved up here, one of the things that was new to me, because I got saved when I was 16, much like Rob, Pentecostal Assembly of God, grew up Catholic, went to, anyway, ended up getting a relationship through Assembly of God and then landing in the middle with Calvary. We go back a long way, but not step in step. But inconvenience. When we built this place, as Rhonda spoke this morning, we didn't build it as a consumer church. Our idea was we're family, and you know, we don't make you, it's okay, we're not going to pressure you. But we want to encourage you to get involved, whether it's get here a little early and set up tables, or stay late and tear down, or come to the farmer's market and put things out, or put things in, or volunteer to help fix things, or work in the sound booth, or work in children's ministry. But the idea was, it's not a consumer church. There's enough of those. And I did that for the longest times. Okay, so I'm always looking in the mirror when I do this. But it's not just I come, I get, I leave, and I pat myself on the back. And, you know, God loves that. But I think there's a season in all our lives where what he loves that plus. How can I give to my family? And one thing I found, and I've done a lot of different things around here, especially when I was working and coaching and putting in 10-hour days, when we were building out here, oftentimes we were tiny and small and little. But when we were building the building, we'd call for, hey, we're going to have a work night Tuesday night. If you can make it, be here at 6. And I'd get her at 6:30 because of coaching, and it was Rob and me. And we'd look at each other and do what we could do. And people worked, and we get all that, so it's all cool. But God never hardly asks me to do things when it's convenient. It's almost always an inconvenience in my head. But long ago, when I had cancer in 2010 and 11, my default answer became, yes, Lord, instead of come up with an excuse. Because if you have to come, you know, I don't know, coming up with an excuse, I'm tired, I'm this, I'm that, I'm too busy, blah, blah. I'm sure God's just sitting there, was listening to me and go, when you're done, will you do this? Will you show up? Will you give a little bit of your time, even though you don't want to? Because you're my child, and I mean, for you parents, you know, raising your child, they've got some chores to do. They've got to behave in a certain way. They don't like it. It's inconvenient for them. But you know what? That's what grows good kids. And we're God's kids. And so that's what I get from this is, in my life, God rarely, even today, asks me when it's convenient. Usually if the roof's leaking or something down here, I'm the kind of facilities guy because I know which end of a hammer to hang on to and which to hit with. Can't hit the darn nail very often, but I try. You know, but usually it's the phone call when I'm in the middle of another job, you know. It's like, you know, hey, this is going on. It's like, I'll get to it as fast as I can. It's inconvenient, but you know what? It's okay. So I'm learning slowly that that's just the way God operates in my world. Hopefully he'll ask you to do stuff that you like, you enjoy, you want to do, and it won't be inconvenient. But if it is, that's okay too.
Yeah, I would say ministry's almost never convenient. When I did the 10 of these as individual sermons, I titled this one, Love Hurts. And it does, love hurts. right? It's gonna cost something. A price will need to get paid. And sometimes the prices are small. Like right now, you heard Rhonda this morning say, you know, we need 3 or 4 people who would say, I'd give up one Sunday a month to go back there instead of being out here, because I can always get the sermon later online. I'll go back and play with the little preschool kids for this service, so that 3 or 4 moms and dads can actually enjoy the service and have it, because their kids are going to be taken care of. Or the children's ministry. I'm looking at John sitting there. He comes every Sunday for like the last, I don't know, X amount of years, and he comes every Sunday without fail, setting up the baskets and the pencils and stuff. There's people who come and set up, make the coffee and that kind of thing. We do an annual deal where we have a banquet at the first week-ish of January, where we thank everybody who served. And so anyone who's on his team serving, we send an invite out, come on, we're going to have a banquet together. And there was like 85 names of regular people serving in this church. I don't think there's even 85 people sitting in the room today, right? So a lot of people are being inconvenienced. And what gets me is going like, well, wait a minute, I know 2 people who both serve in the children's ministry and are on the coffee team too, right? There's a lot of that. And it'd be so cool if everybody else was like, hey, have the one thing. If you're part of the gathering house, have one team you're on. Whether it's a children's ministry team, a coffee team, a setup team, whatever it might be, and pick one. Because years ago I did a word study looking for the word inconvenient in the Old and New Testament. Guess what word you will not find in the Bible? Inconvenient. It never occurs. It's not in God's vocabulary. That word doesn't exist in the throne room of God. That's only a word we use.
That's good stuff.
That's powerful. That's a powerful point. Thank you. On to the next one. Seek to communicate clearly, completely, and directly. And I think those 3 words, clearly, completely, and directly, are really important if we're going to be communicating together.
Yeah.
Those are the 3. Like, we really do need to be clear and complete and direct.
Say what you mean and mean what you say. Don't leave stuff unsaid. Don't think people are going to get it if you roll your eyes or make gestures with your shoulders or, no, you have to speak exactly what you mean, and don't worry about hurting feelings if you speak it graciously, and make sure that who you're speaking to is the proper person. That's the directly. If the person doesn't have power to make a change or isn't the right person to make a decision, you're speaking to the wrong person. Speak to the proper channels, the right people, and speak. That what it means to speak directly. Completely means don't leave anything out, and speaking clearly means don't think if you drop hints, someone else will get it. That's not going to happen. You have to make sure you use all your words, right? That was the big thing in our house when our little kids were little, was use your words. Use your words. What do you mean? Speak, say what you know. All our kids became very verbal. Use your words. What are you trying to actually say? What is it you're getting to? So, and that's what we agreed to. We would say you're going to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth to each other, right? And make sure that who you're telling the truth to is the right person. And don't assume someone else is going to be your go-between. So.
Yeah, a couple of things on that. One is the direct. I taught school for 36 years, and some of the best administrators I had shared some stuff, and a couple of them pushed me towards administration. I'm glad I didn't go. I love the kids too much and being on the front line. But some of the best, I remember one in particular, when a parent would complain, they'd always say, have you talked to the teacher? And if you're uncomfortable, I'll go with you, but I can't solve this. I mean, I love that. So you kind of interrupt and just say, have you talked to them? Because they're the ones that you need to be talking to. And the other one is, my wife she retired after 32 years of being a speech language pathologist. And one of the things is, if what you're saying to me isn't clear, her phrase will be, help me understand what you meant when you said. And I like that. Help me understand. So that would just be an indicator of, say that again, because I don't quite understand. So see if you could maybe rephrase that. Or in my case, what she's usually saying is, say that again and listen to how dumb you sound.
And I'm going to bump us up to the next one too, because I think it ties in really well to what we're talking about here, to offer our opinions with clarity and humility. So it's not only being that clear, direct, and complete, but it's also having clarity and humility in those communications.
Yeah, that help me understand what you meant when you said is a great way to say, assume you're wrong. Before you go giving your opinion, assume your opinion might be wrong. And so ask like, well, the way I see it, maybe this would work better, or I don't, maybe I had an idea, but would this work or not? Because they may know stuff that you don't know. And that's a big one. With clarity, make sure you're saying exactly what you need to say. And with humility, just assume, I have a really strong opinion about something, but what if your opinion's wrong? Right? And there's other things that happen with us, and this is a weird one with a church like ours, we do all these events. We are actually under the constraints of the health department, for instance, for food that gets served at any event. There is a long list of what can and cannot be served depending on how you did the advertising for the event. And whether the food can be sold or not, or going to be given away. And there's a long list of laws we have to follow. And so half the time when people want to come in and they just want to have an event and do a bake sale or whatever, and they just think, well, this seems the easiest peasiest thing to do. Let's just do it the way I want to do it. Are we going to bake cookies at home, bring them in, and sell them here? They say, well, you don't understand. There's a health department permit that we have pulled, which has a whole ton of laws that make that illegal, right? Depending on how you did the advertising. And it might be legal if we did the advertising differently. If you didn't post it on Facebook, it's legal. If you posted on Facebook and made it open, it's not. And so we have all these crazy rules, and so sometimes when people have ideas, they don't know that we're operating under these other constraints. And it's more helpful if you ask more questions instead of assuming that your easy peasy opinion would work great. It would under other circumstances, but sometimes it doesn't. And so there's all these kinds of things. Using rooms here was another thing. We booked, I've said this before, we do 52 Sundays a year. We do 250 days a year of coffee shop with people also holding spontaneous meetings at the tables. And last year, 512 meetings and events were booked in our back rooms and this room. 512. Think about how many that is in the calendar year, which means we constantly have rooms being used that are booked by people. So it's weird, church people think, well, I should just be able to walk in and commandeer a room. It's like, no, you can't, because you don't know whether that room is actually being booked for another event, or whether that room is being set aside for a cleaning day or whatever, because we have so many things that are happening. So there's stuff that we have that's like, you might have opinions, but offer them with clarity and humility, is because we're operating out of a pretty high level of organization here. And we need some help with our congregation understanding that organization, what's working and what isn't. So for me, that's kind of this big one.
Jim, do you want to add anything?
No,
to that?
it's all good.
That's great. Then our last one, number 10, respect and honor the leadership of the church staff, leadership team, as well as other lay leaders.
Yeah, everybody's doing the best they can. Not everybody's perfect. Not everybody has time to do everything perfectly. Not everybody can donate the time. Assume everybody's doing the best they can. And if you come alongside with a complaint, which is, or we rarely get complaints, we more often get suggestions. Know that they probably need help to come alongside them, right? Lay people are doing the best they can, or nobody's out with an agenda here. We get along great. Even our church board, who's an elected board, serving limited terms, they don't make decisions by, well, hey, 5 of us voted yes and 2 voted no, so the decision passed. That's not how we do things. We sit around and we assume, well, if 2 people say strongly no, well, let's find out why your opinion is a strong no. Let's keep talking until we figure out how we can all come to consensus. Because we assume if someone is a strong no, they know something the rest of us don't know, or they're seeing something the rest of us are blind to. And so we try to do consensus, right? So know that when you're talking to church leadership, it's not a bully organization. It's not a group of people trying to superimpose their will on top of you. They're people who are operating under the constraints of, legal issues sometimes, and other times it's just like, hey, doing the best I can with the time I have. And if you want to come alongside and help, do it. But that's what we're asking you to do, is like, if someone is in a leadership position, respect them and listen to what they have to say. And if they have certain rules of how they're doing things, assume those rules have a reason behind it before you start second guessing leadership. Is that reasonable? Is that okay? Is that, yeah, because I mean, some churches, that's not okay. And here's what I've learned. It's not okay when you no longer trust your leaders. As long as you trust your leaders, you're like, I can do that. But the moment you stop trusting your leadership, trusting the board, trusting me, all of our staff's part-time, so when you stop trusting your leaders is when this one becomes a problem. And for me, by the time this is already a problem, the bigger problem's already happened. If we lose your trust, talk to us. How did we lose your trust? What did we do wrong, right? So we always try to bring decisions back to the table. Like, there's times we'll sit around a room and we'll say, that's a great decision. Let's bring the entire membership together and talk about that one, because I think everybody needs buy-in. We're more like that. You want to add anything,
The
Jim?
only thing is that I want to, as leaders, and many of you are that whether you view yourself or not, we need to be approachable, because usually where the breakdown is, I have an issue or I want to go talk to them, but I am nervous. And that's probably early you need to go talk to them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I always hope, is that if I try to be very approachable, just not too scary. You know, if you need to want to come talk, just to say hi, cool. If there's an issue you want to bring up or want me to bring up at leadership, I hope that's comfortable with you. And if not, let's talk about what you're feeling, and because maybe I need to change something. Maybe my wife used to tell me that I sound angry, even though I know you're not, but sometimes when you're talking, you sound like you're mad or something. And it's like, I'm totally unaware of that. I gotta work on that. Or I could just say, that's just me tough. But that's opposite of what we're doing today. It's like, then I need to figure out to smile more or whatever it may be. So being approachable is what I think good leaders are, because when somebody's afraid to come to somebody to discuss something, that's not healthy.
Yeah. If I ever lose your trust, come tell me that. Come tell me I lost your trust. Don't fight decisions the leaderships try to make. Instead, come say, you lost my trust when this thing happened, or when you said that thing, but this thing happened instead. I'd rather you came and told me truthfully that I blew it and I lost your trust.